A black man kicked out of car dealership. Next day, he returns with his Rolls-Royce. What happens when a successful black CEO, wrongly accused and arrested at a luxury car dealership, decides to fight back not just for his freedom, but for justice? You might think you know how this story ends, but the truly shocking twist comes when digital secrets and a powerful owner's desperate gamble change everything. Subscribe, like, and listen now to uncover the full, gripping story of the ghost of Langley Prestige. The polished chrome handle felt cold beneath Malik Thompson's fingers, a stark contrast to the humid Austin afternoon. He'd barely stepped onto the showroom floor, the scent of new leather and expensive polish filling his nostrils, when a voice cut through the hushed reverence. "Can I help you find the exit?" Malik turned. A salesman, mid-40s, slicked-back hair, name tag reading Greg, stood with arms crossed, a sneer barely concealed. Malik, dressed in comfortable jeans and a polo shirt from his own tech startup, Innovate Solutions, subtly embroidered on the chest, felt a familiar prickle. He kept his voice even. "Actually, I'm interested in the new electric SUV, the Odyssey X." Greg's eyes did a slow, deliberate scan, lingering on Malik's casual attire, his dark skin. "Sir, the vehicles here represent a significant investment. Perhaps something pre-owned down the street would be more suitable." "My budget isn't the issue," Malik replied, pulling a folded cashier's check from his pocket enough to cover the Odyssey X outright, a bonus vehicle for his lead engineers after securing a major Series B funding round. "I'd like to discuss specs and availability." Greg's smirk widened. "Right, budget." He stepped closer, his voice dropping conspiratorially, yet loud enough for the receptionist to glance over. "Look, pal, we have a certain clientele. We don't need trouble." Before Malik could process the implication, Greg clumsily brushed past him, a strange, metallic jangle accompanying the movement. Suddenly, Greg stumbled back, pointing dramatically. "Hey, what are you doing?" He patted his own jacket pocket, then Malik's jeans pocket. "My keys." "He's got my master keys." Greg pulled a thick ring of keys fobs for at least 5 different luxury models from Malik's pocket, holding them up like a trophy. "What? You put those there?" Malik protested, stunned by the blatant setup. "Thief! Security! Call 911!" Greg yelled, backing away. Malik saw the receptionist dialing, her face a mask of alarm. Within minutes, the smooth jazz playing overhead was drowned out by approaching sirens. 2 Austin Police Department officers entered, guns holstered but hands resting near them. Greg, red-faced and panting, pointed. He tried to steal the master keys. Caught him red-handed. The officers approached Malik. "Sir, please place your hands behind your back." "Wait," he planted them. "Check the cameras." Malik pleaded, his mind racing, the humiliation burning hot. "We'll sort it out downtown," the older officer said, his tone weary, already decided. The cold click of handcuffs echoed in the cavernous showroom. Malik saw Greg exchange a look with another man older, expensive suit, watching from a glass-walled office overlooking the floor. The man gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. As Malik was led out, past the gleaming cars he could easily afford, his mind wasn't on the SUV anymore. It was on the cold steel biting into his wrists and the chilling realization of how quickly his world had been turned upside down. Before the sterile chill of the holding cell, Malik Thompson's world was one of code, algorithms, and the relentless pursuit of innovation. Austin, Texas, was his adopted home, a city buzzing with tech optimism that mirrored his own journey. At 34, he was the founder and CEO of Innovate Solutions, a rapidly growing software company specializing in logistical AI. He hadn't inherited wealth. He'd built his success line by line, debugging code late into the night in cramped apartments, fueled by caffeine and ambition. His parents, a teacher and a postal worker back in Houston, had instilled a fierce work ethic and a belief in meritocracy that Malik carried like a shield. Innovate Solutions had just closed a $50 million Series B funding round, a testament to Malik's vision and his team's brilliance. He wasn't flashy by nature. His usual uniform was jeans and company swag, his apartment comfortable but not ostentatious, his 10-year-old sedan reliable. The celebratory SUV wasn't for him. It was a tangible thank you for the core engineering team who had pulled countless all-nighters to make the funding round possible. He believed in rewarding loyalty and talent. His older sister, Amara Thompson, 38, was his anchor and occasional foil. A partner at a prestigious Austin law firm, she specialized in corporate litigation but possessed a fiery passion for civil rights cases, often working pro bono. She was sharp, pragmatic, and fiercely protective of Malik, having navigated her own path through the often conservative corridors of Texas law. They shared a close bond, forged through shared childhood dreams and the occasional sibling rivalry, now matured into deep mutual respect. Amara admired Malik's drive, while Malik relied on Amara's level-headed counsel. Austin, for Malik, was a city of contrasts. It championed diversity and forward thinking in its tech bubbles and artistic enclaves, yet pockets of old-world prejudice remained, sometimes surfacing unexpectedly. He'd experienced microaggressions before the surprised look when he mentioned he was CEO, the overly scrutinized ID at a bar, the security guard following him in a high-end store. He learned to navigate these moments with a practiced calm, refusing to let ignorance derail his focus. He believed, perhaps naively, that his success, his credentials, the very evidence of his belonging, should be enough. The day of the dealership incident had started like any other Tuesday. A morning meeting with investors, finalizing the details of the funding injection. Lunch with his lead engineers, brainstorming the next development cycle. The decision to visit Langley Prestige Motors was almost an afterthought. It was near his office, known for its inventory of high-end electric vehicles, and he wanted the SUV purchase to be a surprise reveal at the company's upcoming anniversary party. He'd transferred the funds for the cashier's check that morning, the tangible proof of his success folded neatly in his pocket. He knew luxury dealerships could be stuffy, but he hadn't anticipated outright hostility. He wasn't looking for validation, just a vehicle. His normal environment was one where competence and results mattered above all else. Boardrooms, coding sprints, investor pitches, these were arenas where he excelled, where the rules, though demanding, were generally clear. The polished floor of Langley Prestige, however, operated under a different, unspoken code, one that judged him before he'd uttered a word beyond his interest in their product. He carried the weight of his achievements, the proof of his financial stability, but in that moment, none of it seemed to matter. The carefully constructed world he inhabited, built on logic and hard work, felt suddenly fragile, vulnerable to the crude, baseless judgment of a salesman and a system that seemed poised to validate it. The decision to walk into Langley Prestige Motors wasn't impulsive, but it wasn't meticulously planned either. Malik had driven past it countless times on his way to the office complex further down the highway. Its sleek glass facade and rotating display of gleaming vehicles were a landmark. After the celebratory lunch with his team, buoyed by their shared success and the closing of the funding round, the idea solidified. Why wait? He could spec out the Odyssey X today, maybe even drive it off the lot. It felt like the perfect culmination of years of hard work. He parked his sedan, a reliable but unremarkable contrast to the vehicles inside a few blocks away, preferring the short walk. As he entered, the cool air conditioning was a relief from the Texas heat. The showroom was quiet, almost hushed. A couple conferred softly with a salesperson in one corner. A young man polished an already immaculate sports car in another. Malik took a moment to orient himself, spotting the Odyssey X model near the back, plugged into a charging station. He headed towards it, appreciating its design lines. That's when Greg intercepted him. The initial exchange was subtly dismissive, Greg's posture radiating territoriality. Malik, accustomed to sizing up situations quickly, recognized the type, someone whose sense of self-worth was tied to the luxury goods they guarded. He consciously modulated his own body language, keeping it open and non-confrontational, stating his interest clearly and professionally. The shift from condescension to aggression was jarringly swift. Greg's comment about finding the exit, the invasive visual assessment, the suggestion of a more suitable dealership, each remark was a calculated barb. Malik felt the familiar heat rise in his chest, but pushed it down. He produced the cashier's check, hoping the undeniable proof of funds would cut through the prejudice. It did the opposite. It seemed to infuriate Greg, perhaps challenging his assumptions or his perceived authority. The planting of the keys was quick, almost clumsy, but undeniable. Malik felt the bump, the slight weight added to his pocket, a fraction of a second before Greg stepped back and yelled. The accusation, thief, echoed strangely in the opulent space. It was theater, crude and shocking. Malik's mind scrambled. Deny it. Demand cameras. Stay calm. But Greg was already playing to the audience, the receptionist, the other staff, the man in the glass office whom Malik now recognized as Victor Langley, the dealership's owner, featured in local business magazines. When the police arrived, Malik tried to explain, his voice tight with adrenaline and disbelief. Officer, he put the keys in my pocket. Please, just check your security footage. It will show you. The older officer, Officer Miller, sighed. Sir, we have a report of attempted theft, and the property was found on your person. We need to take you in for questioning. The other officer, younger, avoided eye contact. There was a chilling efficiency to it all, a presumption of guilt that hung heavier than the humid Austin air outside. Malik saw Greg talking animatedly to the officers, pointing, while Langley watched impassively from his office perch. The call to Amara from the precinct booking area was strained. Mara, I've been arrested. He explained the situation, his voice low, stripped of its usual confidence. He could hear the sharp intake of breath on her end, then the immediate shift into lawyer mode. Questions, precise and rapid. Location? Charges? Arresting officers? Witnesses? Malik's initial reaction was a confusing storm of outrage, humiliation, and a creeping sense of dread. He was a CEO, an innovator, someone who solved complex problems. Being reduced to a suspect, handcuffed based on a transparent lie, felt surreal. His immediate goal crystallized. Clear his name, get out, and understand why this happened. He knew, intellectually, about racial profiling, but the raw, personal experience was profoundly disorienting. Sitting on a cold bench in a holding cell, the smell of antiseptic failing to mask other, older odors. His primary objective was simple survival, navigate this bureaucratic labyrinth and regain his freedom. The fight for justice would have to wait until he was on the other side of the bars. Amara Thompson arrived at the downtown precinct like a controlled storm. Her professional demeanor was immaculate tailored suit, leather briefcase, but her eyes held a laser focus that precinct veterans recognized. She wasn't just any lawyer. She was Malik's sister, and her brother was wrongfully detained. Her first hurdle was access. Standard procedure, night court backlogs, The arresting officers off shift, the bureaucratic molasses worked against quick resolution. She demanded to see the incident report, noting Officer Miller's signature and the sparse, Greg-centric narrative. There was no mention of Malik's immediate claim that the keys were planted. Amara began documenting every interaction, every delay, every name. She immediately requested bail, presenting Malik's clean record, his community ties as a local business owner, and the significant funding round his company had just secured as proof he wasn't a flight risk. The duty magistrate, however, seemed swayed by the initial report and the nature of the alleged crime master keys to high-value vehicles. Bail was set, but higher than expected and contingent on processing that wouldn't happen until morning. Malik would spend the night in jail. Amara felt a cold fury, recognizing the subtle ways the system could grind down even the innocent. Her next move was evidence. "Check the cameras," Malik had pleaded. Amara filed an emergency motion demanding Langley Prestige preserve and produce all surveillance footage from the showroom floor during the time of the incident. She suspected they would stonewall. Simultaneously, she dispatched an investigator from her firm to canvass the area around the dealership. Were there adjacent businesses? Traffic cameras? Anything with an angle on the entrance or showroom windows? Back at Innovate Solutions, Malik's absence was noted. His COO, Sarah Jenkins, fielded calls, initially covering with explanations of a sudden personal matter. But rumors, fueled by the opaque nature of the situation, began to circulate. Was Malik in trouble? Was the funding round secure? Sarah, fiercely loyal but increasingly worried, tried to maintain normalcy while fielding concerned calls from investors Amara had preemptively notified, assuring them the situation was under control and unrelated to company operations. Malik endured the longest night of his life. The dehumanizing process of booking, the rough fabric of the jail uniform, the echoing clang of cell doors, the forced proximity to genuine despair and simmering violence, it chipped away at his sense of self. He focused on Amara, on the logic of his innocence, repeating the sequence of events in his mind, searching for flaws in Greg's story. He overheard snippets of conversation, realizing that Victor Langley, the owner, wasn't just passively watching. He'd apparently made calls, ensuring the narrative stuck, maybe leaning on connections within the department cultivated over years of being a prominent local businessman. It wasn't necessarily direct bribery, Amara later explained, but the soft corruption of influence and mutual backscratching. The investigator struck gold. A boutique clothing store across the street had a security camera angled perfectly towards Langley Prestige's main entrance and a portion of the showroom floor through the large glass windows. The owner, initially hesitant, agreed to share the footage after Amara explained the situation and assured confidentiality. The video was grainy, shot from a distance, but clear enough it showed Greg approaching Malik, the brief interaction, Greg subtly maneuvering, and then, crucially, a distinct motion Greg's hand darting toward Malik's pocket just before he recoiled dramatically. It wasn't perfect, but it corroborated Malik's account and directly contradicted Greg's and the police report's implication that Malik had initiated the contact or theft. Armed with the footage and Malik's pristine financial records, proving he had no conceivable motive for theft, Amara prepared for the morning arraignment. Langley's lawyer, a slick corporate type named Henderson, was already there, conferring quietly with the assistant district attorney. Henderson presented Langley Prestige's official statement. Regret over the incident, full cooperation with law enforcement, but emphasizing the seriousness of attempting to steal master keys valued at thousands of dollars, potentially facilitating grand theft auto on a massive scale. They were subtly painting Malik as sophisticated and potentially dangerous. The complication wasn't just Greg's lie anymore. It was Langley's deliberate campaign to solidify that lie, using his resources and reputation to crush Malik before he could even mount a defense. The stakes were rising rapidly from a wrongful arrest to a full-blown assault on Malik's character and freedom, orchestrated by a man who saw him not as a customer, but as an obstacle easily removed. The arraignment courtroom was small, stuffy, and radiated impatience. Malik stood beside Amara, wearing the same clothes he'd been arrested in, now rumpled and carrying the faint scent of the holding cell. He felt exposed, judged by everyone from the bailiff to the judge peering down from the bench. Henderson, Langley's lawyer, oozed confidence, presenting the dealership's stance as that of a victimized business protecting its assets. The ADA, clearly influenced by the initial report and Henderson's narrative, recommended proceeding with felony charges for attempted grand larceny. Then Amara stepped forward. Calmly, methodically, she dismantled the prosecution's flimsy case. She presented Malik's background, the absurdity of the motive given his recent financial success, backed by bank statements and news articles about the funding round, and highlighted the inconsistencies in Greg's account versus standard dealership procedures. Then came the linchpin, the surveillance footage from the store across the street. "Your Honor," Amara stated, her voice resonating with controlled indignation. While Langley Prestige claims its own internal cameras were unfortunately malfunctioning during the exact window of this incident, footage from an adjacent business tells a different story. She submitted the time-stamped video file. As it played on the courtroom monitors, a hush fell. The grainy footage wasn't cinematic, but it was damning. It clearly showed Greg initiating the close contact, the suspicious movement near Malik's pocket, and Greg's immediate, theatrical reaction afterward. It didn't show Malik reaching for anything. Henderson objected vehemently, grainy, inconclusive, improperly obtained, but the visual evidence, coupled with the lack of any motive in Malik's clean record, shifted the atmosphere. The judge watched the loop twice, brow furrowed. He questioned the ADA about the dealership's camera malfunction, his tone skeptical. After a tense silence, the judge addressed the ADA. Based on the evidence presented today, particularly the third-party footage casting significant doubt on the complainant's narrative and the defendant's verifiable lack of motive and strong community ties, I see insufficient probable cause to proceed with these felony charges at this time. He banged his gavel. Charges dismissed. Mr. Thompson, you are released. Relief washed over Malik so intensely his knees almost buckled. He gripped the defendant's table, breathing deeply. He exchanged a look with Amara, a shared glance of exhaustion and triumph. But as they walked out of the courtroom, past a stunned Henderson and a now sweating Greg, who had been required to attend, Malik's relief began to curdle into cold anger. He was free, yes, but the past 24 hours couldn't be erased. The humiliation, the fear, the casual stripping away of his dignity based entirely on a prejudice-fueled lie. He saw Victor Langley standing near the courthouse exit, talking animatedly on his phone, a scowl etched on his face. Langley glanced up, saw Malik, and his expression hardened into one of pure contempt before he turned away abruptly. In that moment, Malik knew this wasn't over. Getting the charges dismissed was just the first step. Langley and Greg hadn't just made a mistake. They had deliberately tried to ruin him, banking on the system backing them up. They had underestimated him, underestimated Amara, and underestimated the power of a simple security camera across the street. Outside, in the bright Texas sun, Malik turned to Amara. "Thank you, Mara. You saved me." He paused, his gaze hardening. "But they can't get away with this. Dismissed charges aren't enough. This wasn't just about me. How many other people have they done this to? How many didn't have a sister who's a partner at a law firm? How many didn't get lucky with a camera angle? Amara nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. "What are you thinking, Malik?" "I'm thinking," Malik said, his voice low but firm, "the mind that built algorithms now calculating a different kind of problem, that Langley Prestige Motors owes a debt. And I'm going to collect." His goal shifted irrevocably. It was no longer about defense. It was about dismantling the source of the injustice. He wouldn't just walk away. This was the point of no return. He was going to fight back, not just for his own name, but for everyone else who might have been, or could be, a victim of Langley's calculated prejudice. The lawsuit wasn't just an option, it was a necessity. The dismissal of criminal charges was a victory, but a fragile one. It cleared Malik's name legally in that specific instance, but the reputational damage lingered, and the underlying injustice remained unaddressed. Back in the familiar comfort of Amara's sleek, modern law office, the siblings began strategizing their counteroffensive. The adrenaline of the release faded, replaced by a grim determination. "Okay, civil suit," Amara stated, pulling up legal databases on her monitor. "False arrest, malicious prosecution, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress. And, crucially, we need to investigate potential violations of civil rights based on racial discrimination." Malik, fueled by coffee and righteous anger, paced the office. It felt planned, Mara. Greg's actions, Langley watching, the malfunctioning cameras, the immediate escalation. This wasn't just one rogue salesman having a bad day. "Agreed," Amara said, "which means we need discovery. Internal communications, personnel files, sales records, customer complaints, maintenance logs for those cameras. We need to show a pattern, or at least gross negligence and deliberate obfuscation." The first step was filing the lawsuit. Amara drafted a comprehensive complaint, detailing the events with precision and citing the relevant statutes. The moment it was electronically filed, it sent ripples through the Austin business community. Langley Prestige, through Henderson, issued a defiant statement calling the lawsuit meritless retaliation and vowing to vigorously defend their reputation and employees. The regrouping phase wasn't just legal, it was personal and professional. Malik had to address the situation head-on at Innovate Solutions. He called an all-hands meeting, explaining frankly what had happened, emphasizing it was a personal matter unrelated to the company's stability, but also highlighting the injustice he faced. His transparency was met with overwhelming support from his team, solidifying their loyalty. Sarah Jenkins proved invaluable, managing internal communications and reassuring nervous investors, who, while concerned about the distraction, were ultimately placated by Malik's directness and Amara's legal pedigree. The discovery process began, and Langley's legal team immediately erected roadblocks. Motions to quash subpoenas, claims of proprietary information, heavily redacted documents, every request was met with resistance. Henderson was clearly employing a strategy of attrition, hoping to bleed Malik dry financially and emotionally. But Malik had resources, and Amara had tenacity. They hired forensic accountants to scrutinize the limited financial data they did receive, looking for anomalies. Malik, leveraging his tech background, suggested analyzing metadata from the documents they did get, looking for hidden information or patterns in revision history. A potential break came from an unexpected source. A former service manager at Langley Prestige, let go months earlier under dubious circumstances, contacted Amara anonymously. He'd seen Greg's behavior before, not planting keys, perhaps, but certainly steering minority customers towards higher interest financing, unnecessary service packages, or subtly discouraging them altogether. He spoke of an internal culture, fostered by Langley himself, that prioritized high-margin sales above all else, sometimes crossing ethical lines. While hesitant to testify publicly for fear of reprisal, his information provided crucial avenues for Amara to explore in depositions. Greg's deposition was tense. Under Amara's sharp questioning, his story started showing cracks. He couldn't adequately explain why he hadn't followed standard procedure for suspected theft, like involving management before confronting a customer. Nor could he logically refute the timeline suggested by the external camera footage. He stuck to his core lie, but became visibly flustered and contradictory on details. Langley's deposition was a masterclass in deflection. Polished, calm, and utterly dismissive, he painted himself as an involved but ultimately hands-off owner, trusting his staff implicitly. He expressed disappointment in the situation but denied any knowledge of discriminatory practices or the camera malfunction's convenient timing. He blamed Malik for escalating the situation and Greg for perhaps overreacting under pressure. The personal toll mounted. Malik found himself looking over his shoulder, wary of further retaliation. Sleep was difficult. The casual confidence he once possessed was tempered by a new, unwelcome awareness of his vulnerability. Amara, meanwhile, juggled the demanding case with her existing workload, fueled by caffeine and a sister's protective instinct. They were fighting a well-funded opponent on his home turf, and the path ahead felt arduous. Yet, with each small inconsistency uncovered, each minor procedural victory won by Amara, their resolve hardened. They were no longer just reacting. They were building a case, brick by painstaking brick, based on the truth Langley was desperately trying to conceal. The new strategy was clear: expose the pattern, prove the intent, and make the cost of prejudice too high for Langley to bear. As the civil suit crawled towards a potential trial date, the pressure intensified. Langley Prestige, under Henderson's guidance, launched a subtle but insidious PR campaign. Op-eds appeared in local business journals championing Langley's contributions to the Austin economy, hinting at the disruptive nature of opportunistic lawsuits. Online comments, likely orchestrated, began painting Malik as an entitled tech bro looking for a payday. It was an attempt to poison the potential jury pool and isolate Malik publicly. Amara countered by meticulously documenting every instance of obstruction and discovery abuse by Langley's team, filing motions for sanctions. She focused her discovery requests, narrowing in on specific financial records and communications between Langley and Greg around the time of the incident. The former service manager, emboldened by Amara's persistence and protected by a confidentiality agreement, provided more details. Specific instances where black customers were quoted higher prices or steered away from promotions. Internal emails using coded language to flag undesirable clientele. Malik, meanwhile, channeled his frustration into his own expertise. While the lawyers battled over depositions and documents, he focused on the digital breadcrumbs. Working with a cybersecurity consultant recommended by Amara, they analyzed the metadata from the few internal emails they had managed to obtain. They found evidence of deleted calendar entries for the day of the incident specifically, a meeting between Langley and Greg scheduled just an hour before Malik arrived. They also found fragments of network logs suggesting the dealership's security camera system had been accessed remotely shortly after the police were called, contradicting the malfunction claim. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was strong circumstantial evidence of a cover-up. The biggest test came when Henderson filed a motion for summary judgment, arguing that even if Greg acted improperly, there was no evidence Langley himself directed or condoned discriminatory actions, attempting to shield the dealership owner personally and limit potential damages. It was a critical juncture. If the judge granted summary judgment, the case against Langley personally could be dismissed, significantly weakening their leverage. Amara prepared relentlessly for the hearing. Malik felt the weight of this moment. His investors were getting restless. The legal fees were mounting. Doubt began to creep in. Was this fight worth the continued stress, the public scrutiny, the financial drain? He spent a long night staring at the Austin skyline from his apartment window, questioning his decision to pursue this path. The image of the cold handcuffs, the feeling of helplessness in the holding cell, warred with the exhaustion and the pragmatic urge to cut his losses and move on. This dark night of the soul was interrupted by a call from Amara. "Malik, I think we have something." The anonymous former service manager had decided to come forward. Seeing Langley's tactics and Malik's perseverance, he'd found his conscience. He was willing to provide a sworn affidavit detailing the discriminatory practices he witnessed and Langley's implicit encouragement of them. His testimony, combined with the digital evidence Malik had helped uncover in Greg's shaky deposition, would be powerful ammunition against the summary judgment motion. On the day of the hearing, Malik made a decision. He drove to the courthouse not in his old sedan, but in a brand-new, gleaming black Rolls-Royce Ghost he'd purchased the week before. It wasn't about showing off wealth in the way Langley understood it. It was a statement. He parked it legally, conspicuously, across the street from the courthouse entrance. As he walked up the steps, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, he saw Henderson conferring with Langley near the entrance. Langley's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the car, then narrowed as he saw Malik approaching, poised and resolute. The message was clear: I am not broken. I am not intimidated. And I have the resources to see this through. It was a psychological blow before the legal arguments even began, a visible symbol of Malik's refusal to be defined or diminished by their actions. He wasn't just a man they tried to frame. He was a force they hadn't reckoned with. The summary judgment hearing became the de facto climax. Judge Elena Ramirez, known for her sharp intellect and no-nonsense demeanor, presided. Henderson argued forcefully, reiterating that Greg's alleged actions, even if true, were those of a single employee and couldn't be imputed to Langley or the dealership as a whole without direct proof of instruction or policy. He dismissed the former manager's expected testimony as sour grapes from a disgruntled employee. Amara rose, her voice steady and clear. She systematically laid out the pattern. The initial discriminatory encounter, the improbable planting of keys, the convenient camera malfunction, Greg's inconsistencies under oath, Langley's presence and nod during the arrest, the attempts to obstruct discovery. Then, she presented the digital evidence, the deleted calendar entry hinting at coordination, the network logs suggesting tampering with the camera footage. Finally, she introduced the sworn affidavit from the former service manager. It detailed specific instances, dates, and internal conversations suggesting a pervasive culture, encouraged from the top, of viewing minority customers with suspicion and prioritizing profit over ethical treatment. It wasn't just Greg, it was a climate fostered by Langley.